One of the big stories dominating news headlines, as it should, is that the United States government has less than 30 days of cash left on hand. Now, that's a big deal. I mean, it's more than a big deal. We're talking about a, $26 trillion economy, the greatest economy in the history of the world, the greatest military in the history of the world, the greatest ingenuity in the history of the world, $26 trillion economy. We're talking, $5-6 trillion of revenue coming in from taxes, and yet they have less than 30 days of cash on hand. Imagine if you ran your finances like that. Now, I've been talking about this for a while. It shouldn't come as a huge surprise to you. Part of it, well, it's two parts. How does anyone go broke? Well, it's usually two parts of the equation. One, there's an income problem, and two, there's an expense problem. There's a spending problem. So easy math is you're spending more than you're bringing in, obviously. And so that's what the federal government has, of course, right? They continue to spend more and more money every single year. And they're spending more than they're making. Now, they're spending more every year, and now we're seeing income plummeting. And I've been talking about this for a while. I told you this was coming 6-8 months ago. And the reason why is because the Fed going on the warpath of raising rates at the fastest pace in history. And it's doing a couple things. Why are they doing that? Of course, to fight inflation. Prices are going up too much, and so the Fed says, well, here's what we'll do. We'll make everybody broke. And if everybody's broke, then they will stop buying as much. They won't drive as much. They won't eat out as much. They won't travel as much, and that will bring prices down. They're going to crush demand, quote unquote, crush demand by making people broke. The problem is when people are broke and asset prices come down and they don't have as much money to spend, then they don't pay as much taxes. And if they don't pay as much taxes, then the government doesn't have any income. But unlike you and I, who if our income goes down, our expenses go down, no, not the government. Even though income goes down, expenses are still going up. And here we are at the debt limit ceiling again. You've heard this before. We've been at this point several times in history. As a matter of fact, dozens of times in history, because every single time we hit the debt limit, we have to raise it. And every time we get to this point where we hit the debt limit ceiling, a debate happens to how high should we raise it, what should we do about it, and all those things. And here we are at another debate and, seemingly at a stalemate. And again, we've been at a stalemate before. But is it okay? Is it okay if we get past the stalemate? In my opinion, even if, and I would say the most probable outcome is we do come to a resolution on this. But even if we do, there's irreparable harm that's happening. So let's break down what's happening a little bit here. So first of all, we're at about $32 trillion of government debt. And when they say, well, we owe it to ourselves, well, yes and no. If you have a pension, most likely you've bought government debt and they owe you money. If you're a foreign government or some sort of sovereign fund, you own government debt. So if the government defaults on that, that means your retirement probably takes a massive hit or goes away, right? But it also does irreparable harm to the country itself. The very fact that we're even debating this weakens the confidence and the trust in the United States government and the currency and all those things. We know that in two previous debt ceiling debates in 2011 and 2013 that went for quite a long time, that were two of the most extreme debt debates that we had, we saw the credit rating of the United States government get lowered. What does that mean? Well, when they lowered the credit rating, that means that the government has to pay a higher interest rate for the debt. So that happened in 2011 during that showdown. Now, Alan Greenspan famously went on TV, when he was still head of the Federal Reserve, and said that the United States can never default on its debt because it has a money printer. And I've made that case many times. I don't believe any country with a money printer will ever default. However, it's not totally true because there's actually two types of defaults. One is a deflationary default where we don't pay the money, and the second is an inflationary default where we print the money. They're both defaults. So, for example, if I owed you a Mona Lisa painting, I borrowed it from you. I owed it to you. But instead of giving you the Mona Lisa painting, I just printed one off my inkjet printer and I gave it to you. That's inflationary. I printed a counterfeit and I gave you the counterfeit instead of back what you owed. That's a default as well. Default one, I don't give you the Mona Lisa back. Default number two, I printed on my inkjet and I give it to you. And that's basically what the government done. So we know in 1933, the government owed gold, and so they just stole it from all the people. 1933, they made it illegal for Americans to own gold, and then they devalued it. They changed the price from $20 an ounce to $35 an ounce. That's a default. 1971, the nations around the world wanted all their gold back from the United States. France sent over warships to collect the gold, and Richard Nixon said, nope, the gold window's closed. We're not giving gold back anymore. That was a default. So it does happen. But here we are back at another debate here. And I want to break this down for you a little bit just so you can understand what they're fighting over, so you understand where we're going here. So check it out. So the Biden administration wants unlimited spending power. So just get rid of the debt ceiling limit. Let's just spend as much as we want. The Republicans want to spend a bunch of money as well. They just want to spend a little bit less. So I'm not right or left here. Both sides want to continue to print more money. One side just wants to spend even more. So the Republicans have a plan. McCarthy put together a plan called Limit, Save, Grow Act. And they said, look, we'll raise the debt limit by $1.5 trillion. It's not a small number. We'll raise it by $1.5 trillion. And then what we want to do is we want to limit the future budget increases to just 1% a year. Now, Biden administration says, oh, they're going to cut Social Security, they're going to cut Medicare. No, they're going to, the Republicans said no caps on Social Security or Medicare. But what they do want is they want stricter welfare rules. Welfare has gotten out of hand. As a matter of fact, it's increased by 240% over the last 40 years. It's gotten out of control, rife with fraud. They want to tighten that up a little bit. They also want to cut the $80 million that the Biden administration wants to give to the IRS to arm a bunch of IRS officers to come shine flashlights into your accounts of $600 or more. They also want to cancel the student loan forgiveness because that's the largest asset on the government's books. They want to repeal some pieces of the IRA Act, the Inflation Reduction Act, and they want to add legislation to bring U.S. energy back to the United States, meaning, get more oil and natural gas out of the ground and make the United States energy independent again. All sound like good things to me. It still increases the budget by $1.5 trillion, but of course the Biden administration says, no deal. No deal. You're going to shut it down. So we'll see how this plays out. Now, what does this tell us? It tells us that there is massive amounts of money printing ahead, either way, Republican or Democrat, doesn't matter, which means more inflation ahead. And so we know the directionality. We don't know the timing. We know the directionality.